Hello everyone and welcome back. Okay, in this tutorial what we're going to do is we're going to use nested loops, i.e. a loop inside of a loop, to iterate over every single element that is in our heroes, our two-dimensional array called heroes. So Superman all the way down to A-Train. So to do this we can create a for loop and I have a loop inside of a loop. So the outer loop is basically going to decide which array we are iterating over. So the outer loop decides which array to iterate over, okay? So if I was to say for let I be equal to 0, starting a counter variable I at 0, I want to run the loop while I is less than 3, and after each loop iteration I want to increment our counter variable so we don't get stuck in an infinite loop, okay? And then what we can do is we can have an inner loop which will decide which element of the array we are iterating over. So the first time we enter the outer loop, so I is a value of 0, okay, what's going to happen is we'll be iterating over this array. Then we get to our inner loop, and the inner loop will decide which element of that array we are iterating over. So I'm going to say let j be equal to 0, okay, and we're going to run our loop while j is less than 3 as well, because we have 1, 2, 3 elements in this array. So at index 0, at index 1, and index 2, we'll log out each element to the console. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say j++. So remember, j is our counter variable for the inner loop, and after each iteration we just want to make sure we are increasing our counter variable there. So the inner loop decides which element of the array to iterate over, okay? And we see the answers here. So you know, for example, if we were to log out to the console heroes at index 0, 0, well, this is array 0, and that is the first element of that array, also at index 0. So 0, 0 will log out Superman. So how do we do that? Well, we can just say console.log. We know we need to log out 0, 0, so it's going to be heroes, and the outer loop decides which array to iterate over, and the inner loop, j, will decide which element of the array to iterate over. And that's actually our code that we need. So we have our outer loop and we have our inner loop. So if I actually just comment all of that out, this loop should actually work for us, okay? So let me just save and refresh. And we still get the heroes logged out to the console. Okay, so that's pretty awesome. But there are some problems here, okay? What if I was to add another array to this heroes two-dimensional array? So maybe we have a bunch of heroes here. We'll say the Deep, we'll say Robin, and we'll say Aquaman. Spelled correctly, awesome. Okay, so now we have an array at index of 3, okay? But here's the problem. We've hard-coded all this. So if I save and refresh, we're not getting the last, we're not getting the elements of the newest array that we've added, okay? So how can we change that? Well, here's a really cool thing. Do you remember when we worked with arrays, we saw we could access the length property. If I say console.log heroes.length, okay, this is actually going to give us a number, okay? And this should actually give us a number of 4. And that is basically how many arrays are in the two-dimensional array. So there's actually 4. Well, we know that if we were to change I to run while I is less than 4, that will include the last array, okay? But I've hard-coded that, so instead of saying 4, we can just say heroes.length. And what that means is if someone else come along and add another array to our two-dimensional array, our code is dynamic. Any future array that is added, we will be able to get that, okay? And our code still works. Now, there is a problem as well with the inner loop, and that is because we've also hard-coded this. So what we could do is, instead of running the loop while j is less than I, we can run it while j is less than our heroes array, whatever array we're iterating over, dot length, okay? So for example, each of these arrays have a length of 3, okay? So nothing is going to change here. But now, if I was to add just one element to one of the arrays, I'm actually trying to think of a superhero. Starlight. We don't have Starlight here. Starlight. Okay. Now what's going to happen is, when we get to this array, okay, so when I has a value of 2, so we've gone 0, 1, 2, when we get to the inner loop, we're actually going to run while j is less than heroes at index I.length. So this will actually have this here will actually have a value of 4 for that array. Okay? And to prove that to you, if I save and refresh, we're going to get Starlight included. And see there, we get Starlight. So the great thing now about the code we've written, when the outer loop, you run the loop while I is less than the array name.length, and for the inner loop, you run while j, your counter variable, is less than the length of whatever array you're iterating over. Our loops now are dynamic, so if we were to add another array here or add different new elements to our superheroes, maybe we're calling in more heroes, they would actually be included in our array. I don't know, maybe there's a future Marvel movie where Thanos for some reason actually joins the good guys. If I was to add Thanos there to the last array and refresh, he is included. Thank you for joining the good people. Okay, great. So guys, that is how you can use nested loops to iterate over a two-dimensional array. Exciting chapter coming up now. We'll be talking